Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
So this is our review of the second test match from Edgbaston, which of course ended in a colossal victory for India. We'll look back at the game and also project ahead to Lords, which comes up in only a couple of days' time, starting on Thursday, their third test, and what teams each side is likely to pick. And we'll actually do our own little Dream 11 as well out of the series and see if we can pick our own best 11s and see how they do as well. We're going to have a little competition between us, basically. So, Simon, you were there for the whole 5 days. What was the conversation, looking back at the game in the commentary box after the game?
Well, I think there were a few points to pick out, and we'll discuss them actually in the next half an hour. England's team selection, England's decision at the toss, the pitch, the brilliance of India's new ball bowlers, and the magnificent Shubman Gill. And no Bumrah for India, but they found a pretty suitable replacement in Akash. Absolutely magnificent game for him. I thought he bowled superbly with the new ball. Totally deserved Indian victory. They dominated England for almost the whole 5 days. The only time England were on top was in that magnificent Smith-Brook partnership. And on the final day, India's victory was never really in doubt. I don't think there was ever a moment on the final day where I thought India wouldn't win. Once they got Pope out early, you thought, yeah, that mitigates the rain and the loss of 10 overs. They're well on their way. It didn't look like one of those days where you thought England were in for a successful big block.
Yeah. I mean, listening to the post-match interviews, obviously the question was posed, did you get it wrong at the toss, Ben? With England obviously deciding to field first on a flat pitch. And, well, I mean, if we look at the series overall, actually, 9 of the 10 days, India have been pretty dominant. The one day they weren't was when England chased down that 371 at Headingley. So really, India have had a very strong performance in the series overall, and England have to get things like the toss right. Stokes was a little bit unconnected. Stokes was a little bit sorry.
Non-committal.
Yes, yeah. Stokes was a bit non-committal about the answer to do with whether they got the toss wrong, but actually Brendan McCullum admitted they did, didn't he, in the post-match press conference, which I think was a good thing to say. Yeah, okay, accept a bit of guilt there. Be honest. We should have batted first. Do you think they didn't really get the pitch they wanted or expected?
I think there's an element in that, just listening between the lines of the post-match reaction. Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes. Brendan McCullum did an interview on the BBC where he talked about the pitch twice in his first answer, with the implying that this isn't the sort of surface they want to play on. And then Ben Stokes in a BBC television interview said it was a subcontinental pitch, and people have made the comment about that. Well, the ball didn't exactly rag on the fourth and fifth day. Well, it doesn't. I suppose what you might say was an old style subcontinental pitch, and what I mean by that is, when they had those great batters, India, the pitches would be pretty flat, and then there would be some assistance at the back end for the spinners. It wouldn't be like recent pitches, which we've seen in India, where you often see the ball spinning on the first day and quite prodigiously as well. So I think he was referring to that. It wasn't quite the pitch England wanted. Although, what sort of pitch do they want? I mean, they seem to like to play on flat pitches and then dominate on flat pitches, but I'm pretty sure it's not what they wanted. Perhaps they wanted a bit of extra pace and bounce in the pitch to help their quicker bowlers as well.
Yeah.
It neutralised England's style of attack, possibly, but India exploited it magnificently. I mean, they're used to playing on pitches like that, and you've played on pitches like that in India as well.
Well, yeah, I thought it was quite interesting watching Akash bowl, actually, because obviously he bowled excellently and he was at the batsman all the time. And he reminded me a little bit of how I bowled in India. And I'm not saying I was as good as him, but I was a similar type of bowler in that I bustled to the crease. I tried to bowl fullish and aim at the stumps. And because I was quite short, a lot of my balls were hitting the stumps in India on pitches like I played in I played in Calcutta and I played in Bangalore, I played in Delhi, and all those pitches I found actually, oddly, for an English bowler, quite conducive to me, because if I pitched the ball up, the ball did seem to grip a bit on the seam and move either way. There was a bit of reverse swing, although in those days we didn't know what it was. We just suddenly turned the ball round and it swung the other way. And I found, I got a ball here actually. I found that if I held the ball quite loosely in the fingers, at the end of the fingers, which I noticed Akashdeep was doing, and sort of flicked it out with quite strong sort of finger action, it did do something off the pitch. And because I was short, it kept a bit low and, hit the stumps or hit the pads. I'm not saying I got six for or anything, but I did get a few wickets against good players on those sort of tracks. And I felt a bit sorry for England because what they needed was a sort of Darren Gough type bowler, someone who actually has had, some success at Edgbaston. In fact, that's where he made his one-day debut for England. And he hit the pitch hard and skidded it at the batters and, obviously hit the stumps quite often. I just felt England lacked that, and they bowled traditionally slightly back of a length. Obviously, Wokes does that. Certainly, Cast does as well. They don't really pitch the ball up quite as much, and I think the length that Akashdeep bowled was the thing that really did the damage. And England didn't quite have a bowler like that. Of course, as you say, I think they prefer that bounce like they had at Headingley because they do bowl just slightly shorter of a length. And the ball then carries through and the edges carry and all that. So they're bowling more for edges and caught slips, whereas the Indians were bowling more for bowls and LBWs. And that was a good way to go on that pitch. So, they certainly figured out how to bowl on it. And I think they also figured out how to bat on it as well, because I noticed a couple of their players were batting quite well out of their crease. And I think they were trying to force England to make sure they didn't bowl too full, because they knew that the fuller length was the one that was going to be difficult to deal with. So bat out of your crease, which makes the bowlers naturally bowl just a little bit shorter, and then they can deal with the if there is any movement, you've got the sort of time to deal with it, and you're ruling LBW out of the equation, because if you go slightly short of a length, the ball will probably pass over the top of the stumps. So I noticed Shubman Gill in particular used the ploy that Virat Kohli did to counter Jimmy Anderson in 2018, I think it was, where he stood probably a yard outside of his crease.
Yeah, the other thing about the pitch shots, if it was a subcontinental pitch, I mean, what do you normally do if you win the toss in the subcontinent?
Yes.
Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, you bat first. It doesn't guarantee victory, and we've seen teams bat second in the subcontinent and win. So there's something, isn't it? Brendan McCullum was saying it didn't quite do as much as we were expecting, and I think they wanted a little bit more grass on it, but yeah, so they have to suck it up really. But you could say, well, it's all very well to say it wasn't the pitch we wanted, but I think if England had batted first, they would have been able to perhaps negate that, and there's a good chance that they might have been able to build a really big first innings score. And we know that if you build a first innings score in a test match, you can control the game. There's the scoreboard pressure that comes to bear, and that's been the traditional way of winning test matches for so long. And England have changed that. Their approach has been different, and they feel that. I mean, there is that thing about second innings. If there's more there on the first innings, or we'll talk about this with Lords actually, because it's a really interesting decision coming up. Whoever wins the toss at Lords, what you do is you put a team in, knowing that there's going to be more there on the first day, and you can restrict their first innings score, and then when the pitch flattens out and for the second innings, you can go past them, and that's the scoreboard pressure you're looking to bring to bear in the second innings. Whereas when you bat the first innings, you bat big, and if you can do so, you control the game. And India won the test match in a really traditional way, didn't they? The traditional test match victory: build a first innings score, keep the pressure on, win it on the last day when there's a little bit in the pitch and the team are struggling to cope.
Yeah, absolutely. And England are wedded, or were wedded, too much to the idea that they have a powerful batting lineup, an aggressive batting lineup that can chase any score. Well, it goes back to Ben Duckett saying rather foolishly in one of those Indian test matches, "Oh, we'll just chase whatever they set us, 500. Well, you can't chase 600. It's virtually impossible. And it's never been done, obviously. But England have become a bit wedded to that idea that they can chase anything. And it's an admission in a way that their strength is their batting, which it clearly is, but that their bowling, I feel they don't trust their bowling to be able to ram home an initiative on the final day, whereas they do trust their batting to be able to chase a score on the final day, which has been proved a number of times. And it's an admission that their bowling isn't that good, actually. So they have to weigh up. Well, do we trust our batting to start the game well and build up a powerful score and use scoreboard pressure and win the game by fielding last, bowling last? Or do we trust our batters to be able to bat better later in the game and win the game batting last? And in the first test that worked. This test match it didn't. So they, the key thing is they have to strengthen their bowling to be able to be better at fielding last.
Yeah, and we'll look at that after the break. I mean, it would have been interesting, wouldn't it, to see whether England would be able to force home victory with their bowling attack on that pitch on the final day. There would have been quite a lot of focus on Shoaib Bashir, of course, because there was certainly some prodigious spin out of the footmarks for Ravi Jadeja. So yeah, that may have been a problem for some of the left-handers for India. And also there'd been the focus on the other bowlers. If England had 500 on the board and 110 overs in which to bowl India out, would they have been able to do so? One question was answered yesterday. Were England prepared to play for a draw? And they kind of were. It wasn't a sort of fully committed big block from England. There were still lots of shots. I mean, Jamie Smith was still caught on the deep backward square leg boundary trying to hit his third sixth of the over. And he played splendidly again. I mean, looked high class. But again, I'm not quite sure about that shot that he played. I mean, what were you trying to do in that situation? What plan were England fully committed to? I didn't always see it. I thought there were some mixed messages, but generally speaking, they tried to resist India. I thought the key wicket ultimately, well, I think obviously the two early wickets on the final day, the Pope dismissal and the Brook dismissal, that was a good ball, the one that got Harry Brook out. But when Ben Stokes was out, because he was looking determined, wasn't he? And he's not been in great form, but I thought yesterday was perfect for him because he could just bide his time. He didn't have to play lots of aggressive shots. He played one or two if the ball was a poor one, but he was really digging in. Of course, he struggles against Jadeja. He's got him out 7 times, but when Washington Sundar drifted one into him, and I thought once Stokes was out, that was definitely it. I couldn't see England saving the game from there. It was just inevitable, I suppose, and that's why Smith ended up doing what he was doing. But even the last wicket, Bryden Cast, I couldn't quite. I mean, we're into the 20s left in terms of overs. And he was turning down singles, trying to protect Bashir, and then having a massive swipe. And obviously, in the end, hit one up in the air. I mean, look, it was a long shot, but you've got to. I thought you got to be really fully committed to it if you're going to bat for the draw. And it was probably a task beyond them, and they just sort of felt the weight of pressure and the quality of India's bowlers. But yeah, they sort of had a bit of a go at it, but they didn't seem like fully committed to the big block like Josh Buttler produced in that test match, or tried to produce in that test match in Adelaide in the last Ashes, where he made 26 and over 200 balls. But what did you think about England's batting on the final day and their approach?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I suppose what's always said is, try and play your natural game, but you have to rein your natural game in those circumstances, and they didn't entirely. I mean, Smith is an incredible talent, isn't he? He played, mostly fairly responsibly until they got to the bouncer section where they went with the short ball, and he's a bit of a compulsive hooker, actually. I don't think he finds it that easy to get out of the way, and it's often said that you're better off when you're facing lots of short balls to get into a position to hit the ball rather than just duck and weave willy-nilly. Get into a position to try and hit the ball and then, either leave it or paddle it down or whatever. But he doesn't seem to have that mindset. He wants to have a go at it. I don't kind of quite see the logic of that, actually. I thought Stokes played really well. I thought he actually, as you say, applied himself, and he was a bit unlucky to get out. I mean, that dismissal, which was just hitting the pad first before bat, would never have been given out before DRS, because you wouldn't be able to detect there was a slight cannon onto the pad, although the umpire clearly picked it up. But I mean, even he wasn't sure, and he got it right. But it was one of those which you would never have got. You'd have all the old spinners kind of crowing that I could have got loads of LBWs like that. Of course, I'm sure Phil Tufton will be saying that because they would never have got them in the past. Anyway, I mean, he played really well, and he was a bit unlucky to get out, and obviously he looked a little bit kind of disappointed, but actually applied himself really well. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose in the end, when you get down to the tail and you've got 30 overs to survive, Well, I mean, Monty and Jimmy did it, didn't they? They did it with 11 overs to spare when they came together
Yeah.
against Australia in 2009. 20, how many overs were left? 25, 30
It
overs?
was something, yeah, it was about 27 over, something like that, 27, 28 overs. Look, it was a massive long shot. And
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, Jimmy and Monty had a go at it, didn't they? But it was a bit shorter, the amount they had to block out for. And the plan was, so clearly set back in 2009. And perhaps this England team are not really set up to go for a big block draw, which is what, was all that was on offer to them on the final day after India's merciless declaration at over 600 now. There's a lot of chat about that. People saying they've gone on too long. They've gone on too long. We debated it on our fourth day podcast, didn't we? And in a way, we were both right. Then India had too many runs, and England wouldn't have got them one way or another. If they pulled out at 450, pulled out at 520, pulled out at 600. It's a lot of runs in the final innings. It's never been done before. And there's a good reason for that, which is it's damn difficult to do it. And even England on that chase at Headingley, where they wanted 370 in the final day and had enough overs to get it, and the pitch was still good, and there was plenty of bounce in the pitch, so you could play your shots in the outfield was fast. Even they were rocking at one point when Jamie Smith came in with 71 to win with 5 wickets left. You thought another wicket there, and then it really would have been in the balance. So get 450, get 500, get 600. Yeah, damn difficult to do. Someone will do it one day, but it hasn't been done ever in the history of Test cricket. Remember, 418 is the highest. But well played India. I thought they were excellent actually. They really did. I mean, they dominated England. It's a good point you make actually, Yoz, about India dominating England for most of the series so far, and nearly all the days of the Test series, all 10 days. But England somehow are 1-1. I just thought India could actually be going to Lord's 2-0 up, and probably feel they should be. Where all the talk was of England going to Lord's 2-0 up because there was no Jasprit Bumrah in this Test match.
Well, what they did was they sharpened up their fielding as well, didn't they? Apart from the batting in Headingley was pretty good. The bowling was, Bumrah was brilliant in that first innings. They weren't quite so good in the second when England were chasing the runs. Duckett played an outstanding innings, but the Indian catching was poor at Headingley. At Edgbaston, they pouched those early catches in the first innings and had England 80 odd for 5, and probably that was the key. Because England, if they'd got a decent start, Smith and Brooks showed you could bat, and they put on 300. So if England had got a decent start, they might well have got up to India's score of 587 and not given them a 180-run lead. And then the game would have been a one-innings game like at Headingley, and possibly England could have chased 300 to 400 to win. So it might have been the same scenario as at Headingley, but because England lost those early wickets to some sharp catching and good bowling from India, they were always behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, it felt like a pitch on which the game should have been drawn, I think, or it should have been capable to draw the match. Here's a stat from Andy Zaltzman. Do you know that the duration of the Headingley Test match and the Edgbaston Test match was exactly the same? 391.4 overs. Exactly the same number of overs bowled in both games. I'm not sure what that tells us, other than that's just a bizarre statistical quirk. It also shows you can have the same amount of play, but completely different results and completely different passages of play and direction of game and direction of travel in the match.
Does it also show you that you don't need 460 overs, 450 overs, isn't it? 450 overs is the actual scheduled amount of overs you're supposed to have in a Test match. And you can have a very good game in 391 overs. So although both matches have gone to well into the 5th day, you could do 4-day tests with 95 overs in a day. I know everyone will say, well, they'll never bowl 95 overs, they'll only bowl 85 or something, which is probably true. But yeah, interesting that you don't need 450 overs on a flat pitch to have a great match. So there's a little bit of weight in the argument there that 4-day tests might work in the future. I mean, obviously, a pitch doesn't wear as much over 4 days as it would over 5 with good weather and so on. So I don't know. I'd throw that one in just as a sort of controversial comment at the end of part one of this podcast, and we'll take a quick break. And afterwards, we're going to discuss our own combined 11s and have a little competition to see who wins at the end of the Test match at Lord's.
Okay, we haven't done a Betfair announcement, Lord.
No, I know.
We should do.
I don't know what we do.
Like where. Well, I think we should. Where's the series at the moment?
Yes,
after that,
that's right.
What
Okay.
what do the odds say?
Yeah,
what's the
fine.
percentage?
Well, shall I look that up quickly?
Yeah.
Hold on. I was going to do. I mean, so what's our Betfair exchange then?
Well, it's a debate about what should be changes. It's more a debate. We're not necessarily agreeing. I'd just say we're to do our Betfair exchange now. We're going to debate what England's bowling attack should be for Lords.
Okay, fine.
You don't know what I'm going to say.
Right.
I don't know
So,
what you're going to say.
Who will win the series? It's just
Your Wi-Fi is a bit boingy, but it's kind of like it's fine some of the time, and then it cuts out.
I know you cut out a couple of times, but I got the gist of what you were saying.
Yeah, I could tell there's a problem because you stare at me as if you're in on a dark night peering through.
It comes back.
Yeah.
Right. So it's 53 England, 40 India, 14 draw. I suppose you want the odds.
What is it? What is it?
53% England.
Yeah.
40% India.
Yeah.
14 the draw. I'll just see if I can get the odds on that, actually. Hold on. It doesn't actually give the series odds.
Oh well, don't worry. Just do the 53, 40, 14. That'll do. That's enough. We do that, and then a Betfair exchange. Thanks to Betfair at the end.
Fine.
That's 3 mentions.
All right.
Okay. So I pick up. Then I'll say what's the okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Right. You ready to go? Yeah. Okay. So the series is level at 1-1 with 3 matches to play. Quick turnaround for Lords. Only 3 days break for some very weary players. What are the Betfair odds for the series now, yours? Where are we?
Well, the Betfair odds say that England are still favourites, actually, to win the series. 53% England will win, 40% an Indian series win, and 14% the draw. So England definitely favourites, but I suppose 53 against 40 is not perhaps as convincing as it might have been. And when I said at the start of this series I thought England would win 3-1, I'm less convinced by that. I think India have come back very strongly. And what's worrying for England, I suppose, is that their bowlers, the Indian bowlers, have looked more dangerous generally on the pitches than the England bowlers have. So a refresh is clearly necessary for England.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said 2-2 at the start of the series, and after heading, I thought that was a really damaging defeat for India. It's a game they should have won. I wonder if they could actually just really slip away in the series. England could dominate and perhaps win 4, even 5-0. But India have turned that on its head at Edgbaston with a magnificent display, and their players stepped up, and they have got some. I said this at the start of the series. They have got some high quality players. You've got to be pretty good to get in an Indian 11 because a huge country, tremendous competition for places, and they have got Jasprit Bumrah coming back into their side. Well, Bumrah played in the first test, India lost. He didn't play in the second test, India won. I think go figure. But look, clearly they're a better side with him in it. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But I suspect what they'll do in this game, they found Akish Deep. I mean, can he bowl as well again? Possibly at Lords, depends on the pitch conditions. I presume that what they'll do is they'll leave out Deep and they'll bring in Deep and they'll leave out Prasad Krishna. That's how they'll reconfigure their bowling attack. Siraj and Bumrah, and then Akash Deep, and then the spinners. I mean, they might say, well, do we need Washington Sundar, our second spinner at Lords? What do we do with Nitish Kumar Reddy? But I suspect they'll stick with a fairly similar team to Edgbaston with one change. They might tinker a bit more and perhaps strengthen their batting, play 6 full-time batters, which might mean a recall for Sudarstan? I don't know. Let's see. But I'm presuming it's only one change. But what about England? Look, they're not going to change their top seven, are they? I mean, that's fairly set in stone, despite some of the question marks over one or two of the players. I suppose Zach Crawley. People saying, what about Crawley? Played well at Headingley, a really loose shot in the second inning. But they're not going to change that. Unless there's an injury, they're not going to change their top seven. But clearly, they are going to rotate their bowling attack. So what are they going to do? How many changes are England going to make to their bowling attack? It looked pretty weary at times at Edgbaston. They were in the field for a long time, 151 overs in the first innings. And then in the second innings, it was 83, so not as much. But the damage had been done with those 151 overs. And India just did what they wanted to in that second innings by from lunchtime onwards on the fourth day. So what do England do? Jofra Archer, I mean, clearly he's being touted for a comeback, but he's only bowled 18 overs in red ball cricket in the last 4 years. Is that preparation for a Lord's Test match? He was bowling on the square at lunchtime and during the last Test match. What do you say?
Well, I mean, he's got to come back. It's a huge expectation on him, having bowled so little, and the pressure will be massive. Obviously, he's got that sort of X factor, but it will take him a little while to find it, I would have thought. And the big thing, of course, is that he has bowled out Shubman Gill, because obviously one of England's big focuses will how do we get Shubman Gill out, because he's already got 600 runs in the series. And he's threatening Donald Bradman's record, isn't he? 974 is the record number of runs ever made in a Test series by Donald Bradman in 1930, and no one's ever got close to that. Well, Shubman Gill's got 3 Test matches. He's got potentially 6 innings to get another, 380 runs or something. So he could easily do that. England have to find an answer to him. Well, Jofra has had the answer in the past with a ball that gets through between bat and pad, bowls him through the gate. He's done that a couple of times. He's going to be working on that. Probably Gus Atkinson will come back as well. Again, he hasn't had any bowling. So it's a double risk for England, but they do need to do something to refresh it. Everyone was saying, well, they'll change the bowling attack entirely. I sort of feel like they need someone to do some donkey work who's trustworthy and can bowl lots of overs. That would have been Chris Woakes, but Chris Woakes as I think he's got a few wickets at about 70 or 80 in the series so far. He didn't bowl particularly well at Headingley. I thought he did bowl quite well in the first innings at Edgbaston, but he's obviously going to be tired as well, and he's in his mid-30s. So do you play him to do the donkey work?